Hello again, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar today. This is Deliver on the Promise of Agile and DevOps Transformations, Adopting Value Stream Approach to Software Delivery. My name is Sarah Ryan, and I'm delighted to be the moderator for this webinar. Our first presenter today is Betty Zachheim. She is the VP of Industry Strategy at Tasktop, and she works with IT organizations engaged in Agile, Lean, and/or DevOps transformations, using software lifecycle integration to help them overcome issues caused by siloed development practices. Betty has 30 years experience in software development and delivery, and as a software engineer, an engineering manager, product manager, a marketing executive, and has walked a mile in just about everyone's shoes. She's even a professional Scrum Master through scrum.org, and she has spent almost her entire career developing and delivering tools that enable IT teams to be more effective. Her depth of experience has given her a unique perspective of what works and what doesn't. Our guest presenter today is Christopher Condo. Chris is a senior analyst at Forrester, serving the application development and delivery professionals. He's part of Forrester's AD&D coverage of DevOps toolchains, focusing on continuous integration and continuous delivery, as well as software development strategies for enabling those strategies. Prior to his current role as an analyst, Chris was a manager of enterprise web applications for Altran North America, having led projects ranging from web-connected medical devices to warehouse automation. Prior to that, Chris was a software developer with Microsoft, holding both individual contributor and lead engineering roles. He contributed to a number of Microsoft's online SaaS products such as Office Live and Office 365. So, without further ado, I will hand things over to our presenters.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This is Betty, the female voice on the call, and you'll be able to recognize Chris's voice straight away. As you know, before we, during the registration process, we sent to everyone a little survey to judge where they are in their Agile, Lean, and DevOps adoption journey, and we found some interesting results, so we thought we would put them up on the screen first and chat about them a little bit, just to give you an idea actually about the cohorts on this webinar. So interestingly, you know, the first thing we asked is the adoption basically of Lean, DevOps, and Agile. Not surprisingly, to us anyway, Agile definitely led the pack, followed by DevOps and a small percentage using Lean. What we did also look at was kind of the combination, because this was a multiple choice question. Interestingly, but again, not surprisingly, 37% of the respondents said they were using only Agile, 47 using both Agile and DevOps, 11 using all three, 5% using Agile and Lean, but not DevOps, 5% using only DevOps, and no one using only Lean. And I don't think that kind of spectrum surprised us at all. Although it occurs to me we didn't ask folks if they weren't using any of these. Hopefully our respondents are using at least one of these practices.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yes.
So another thing we asked is how successful you thought that these had been for you. And of course, success is in the eye of the beholder, much like beauty. 50% thought mostly successful, only 11 very successful, and 40% less than successful.
Yeah, this doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of folks have gone down this road and have run into some various barriers of success, but hopefully we can help them improve that.
Exactly. I think the thing is, for heaven's sake, just start, because like everything, you know, every improvement endeavor you undertake, you have to start somewhere and get better and better over time. Although we were contemplating, you know, as I said, success is kind of in the eye of the beholder, and what we didn't look at was whether these folks were practitioners, whether they were development and test using Scrum, whether they were in operations, whether they were management. So we kind of pooled everybody together to come up with these results, and we were contemplating that perhaps the folks that are On Scrum teams themselves, really immersed in the ceremonies and the roles of Scrum, they might feel quite a bit more success than they felt before using waterfall techniques. So they might actually feel highly successful. But sometimes we talk to managers, particularly in large enterprises, where they're not necessarily quite seeing the same level of success in Agile and DevOps deployments.
Right, and it all comes down to how they're measuring success sometimes.
I think that's true. I think also a lot of the ceremonies of Scrum kind of can be off-putting as managers are first trying to manage a Scrum team. For example, the notion of done, what is done. Certainly a Scrum team will define their definition of done, but what's done to the Scrum team might not exactly be the same for the manager. They want the whole thing, the whole feature, not necessarily some number of user stories done. And another notion from the Department of perspective is we ask, when you think of DevOps, what do you think of it as? Whenever I talk to folks, this is the first question I ask, because unlike the Agile manifesto, where we actually have some written documentation about what Agile is meant to be, there is no DevOps manifesto. And over time, I think organizations and individuals have adopted it for their own point of view. I think of it, frankly, as the way the majority of the respondents did, which is a culture of collaboration that extends from initial planning all the way to deployment. So really a very holistic view of getting the entire team working together.
Yeah, I find this especially encouraging. I'll be quite honest, when I first started in DevOps maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, it would have been just the bottom one, automation of code verification and deployment. But the fact that most of the respondents responded that it was a culture of collaboration, which really is necessary to make it successful, is very encouraging. I still want to know what other is, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think we might not have put in a fill in the box in there, so that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But yes, indeed, what is other? And then finally, we also asked how familiar you are with the notion of value streams, because this is an important part of this webinar, and we just wanted to make sure that we tailor the content correctly. And very few learned about it with respect to lean manufacturing. Some have heard it applied to software delivery, but don't know much about it. And a little over a third are beginning to use the approach to organize your work, and that also isn't surprising, and we'll spend a little time talking about what a value stream is, so that you have a better understanding by the end of this webinar.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So Chris is going to speak for a while, and then I will speak for a while, and I'll let Chris take it away.
Thank you very much, Betty. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My agenda is going to be like a backdrop for why Agile and DevOps are so important in this day and age of digital transformation. So my agenda is going to talk about digital transformation and some of my own personal experience as a manager of a consulting team, and also perhaps even work as a developer. Also, we're going to then go into what Agile plus DevOps, how it enables digital transformation at speed, and then steps you should take to help you get to Agile plus DevOps, which is going to include some lean practices. So looking forward to talking with you about this. So here's an interesting slide. Forrester does an annual survey that goes out to, it's called the Global Digital Business Online Survey. It basically had 415 executives and companies with 250 more employees. And we were trying to ask them, do you think digital disruption is going to be an impact on your business in the next 12 months? And almost every single industry responded that yes, digital disruption is going to be a problem. And I'll talk about what digital disruption is in a second, but let's just take a look at this. We have healthcare, retail, insurance, all the way down to industrial products. So when people think of digital disruption, they probably are thinking like, oh, I can buy something from Amazon on my phone, or it's going to make it easier for me to hail a cab. But it's happening even inside industries that are trying to manipulate large pieces of equipment, warehouse automation, medical devices. It's really happening in almost every single industry, oil and gas. It's just really fascinating when you look at this. Every industry responded that they expect a lot of digital disruption in their industry. So let me tell you about some of the, in a matter of 12 months as a consulting lead, these are 3 digital transformation projects that I personally either worked on or contributed to in some manner. The very first one was a company that was building glucose meters that normally you just read your glucose reading on a stick pen, and then you'd write it down in a logbook with a pencil and paper, and you'd bring it to your doctor. And you'd go over it, and you and your doctor maybe once every few months would review it and figure out whether or not your A1C was in good order, whether you were hitting your target dates. And what we basically did was we took that and we completely transformed it to a completely digital enabled device. It was the same exact device. It supported a USB cable, so we just had them plug it into their laptop. We uploaded all their data into the cloud. They could now look at it on their mobile phone. It was also shared instantly with their physician. Their physician could run analytics on it and let them know if they were improving or not improving. The end user themselves had very sort of like simplistic analytics, but very helpful to show them that week over week their blood was, their sugar levels are going up or going down as an average. And it really, it was a kind of an interesting way of doing digital transformation on an existing device. The next one was the lowly thermometer. A very large manufacturer came to us and asked if we could take a meat thermometer and turn it into something that professional chefs could use to manage, not just one roast beef in the picture I have here, but say 50 roast beefs all cooking in their industrial kitchens. And we created a mobile device. We also added, standard recipes. If you're using a prime rib, it should be this temperature, and if you're making a turkey, it should be that temperature. And so it just sort of made the lives of these chefs working in these industrial kitchens or large restaurants, made their life a lot easier to deal with. And then the third one, something you see probably on the side of the road or at large, transformer stations. These capacitors, when they fail, transmission line capacitors can lead to widespread power outages and really safety concerns because they can explode in tremendous fashion. And so a large company that manufactures these around the world really came to us and said, how can we retrofit something like this with a device that would make it more like an IoT device so that we don't have to go and manually set up schedules to monitor these devices. They can tell us when they're about to fail by measuring various key performance indicators of whether or not there's too much hydrogen in the oil or whatnot that's used to insulate these capacitors. So we basically did a really quick prototype for this company that included a Raspberry Pi, a sensor, and the ability to connect to a mobile device so that the technician simply had to drive near these devices. They didn't actually want them online. I know I put the cloud there. They used the cloud to analyze the data, but they didn't actually want these individual devices connected to the cloud. They actually connect them via Bluetooth. But it allowed them to actually have these technicians sort of just get a gathering of this data. Their next stage was to try to get them onto a grid, but the very first POC was more of a Bluetooth connection, but it still saved the technician from having to climb through and check every single one of them. They got an aggregate reading of which ones were good and which ones were bad, and they could take corrective action as necessary. So digital transformation requires a strategy of software excellence delivered with speed and agility. That's kind of how I think of it. So when I think of agility, I think of the fact that digital transformation accelerates the pace of software innovation, since every business must be able to react to competitive forces and customer needs. So that means you need to be agile. So in order to be able to compete in a digital transformative way, you need to be agile. You need speed. You need to be able to react to these things and actually deliver the software. So the software release cycle has gone from years and months to days and hours for some companies. They're just simply, checking in code, running a series of automated tests, and then they go out the door with A/B testing or various other live performance testing, and they decide whether or not they want to leave the feature out there and allow it to be used by the full population of their end users, or do they want to pull it back in and maybe make some fine tuning to it. But the idea of sitting on code for long periods of time until it's ready to release and letting it bake for a long time, that is really kind of going out the window, and it's going out really quickly. And then excellence. Fleeting customer loyalty plus a lower barrier of entry, it really means no room for mistakes. And what I mean by that is, every one of us has a mobile device. Every one of us now can download applications as necessary. If for some reason you start running into issues with your favorite online retailer, guess what? You're going to start going to another one that offers you better deals, more foolproof usage, and maybe a better experience. And you're not really necessarily concerned with that particular brand. Right now, Amazon's kind of the king, but they have to fight every single day to stay there. There are competitors at their heels every single day, trying to beat them at their own game, and every single company is going to find they're in that same dogfight pretty soon. So what are we talking about? We're talking about putting Agile to DevOps together, right? So Agile and DevOps, Agile alone is sort of a great methodology. It's a great process to follow, but you can kind of look at it as the Ferrari, right? It's fine-tuned. It works really well. But if it's not running on a really good highway without potholes and without giant expansion gaps like we get in the bridges around here in New England, then you're just going to end up with a bucket of bolts on the side of the highway waiting for a tow truck to come get you. So what you really need is a nice highway, a nice smooth automated highway for Agile to work in tune with your software development process, and that way you can get the most out of both of them. So the idea of just marrying Agile to DevOps is sort of like almost like a match made in heaven, I guess you could say. And this is really the way you can maximize your results from these two different methodologies. So what do we mean by Agile what we say is Agile tears down the wall with business stakeholders. And so what we did was we did a survey at Forrester, the Global Agile Software Application Development Online Survey, as a matter of fact. And we asked folks about their Agile practices. And so on the left-hand column, it's, what were your expected results? And on the right-hand column, what did you actually observe? And so luckily, or maybe thankfully, better business and IT alignment was the one that folks really wanted to have. And that's what your goal is, of building a full Agile development team, one that can communicate up and down the chain together. And what the benefit that was achieved was actually in a stack rank manner was better IT alignment. So, we saw that as a very good positive result. The next one in the stack ranking folks were hoping for was faster delivery of solutions. And on the right-hand side, that was the third most popular, although it was very close to the number 2. And then the third one that they wanted was more opportunities for mid-course corrections, which speaks to the whole idea of Agile. And that was the second one. So the top 3 really speak to the idea of Agile plus DevOps. You get better alignment through Agile, faster delivery of solutions with DevOps, and more opportunity for mid-course corrections, because you're combining those two things together, and you can make the case for pushing new changes through quicker. Now, one that Betty and I, after going over this data, we were looking at it and just, kind of mulling it over and looking at it. And one thing that Betty noticed, which was kind of cool, is that down in the middle of the stack rank on the left was increased team motivation and morale. And on the right-hand side, that actually popped up to like number 4 on the stack rank. And so we kind of saw that as kind of like a little golden star. It's nice when your team feels motivated. It's nice when the morale goes up. And, and it made me think about it because it made sense anecdotally. My own experience, being a developer lead, is that when I feel like I'm delivering a solution that the whole team appreciates, that it's aligned with the business, and I understand why we're working on this code or why we're, working a weekend to get something out the door, I feel much better about it when I know what the end result is going to be. And I feel much better about it when I feel like I have a say in how things are going and that I can actually make a difference in how the company is performing. And I just feel like that's what this, I mean, maybe I'm putting my own thoughts behind this, but that's what I'm reading into this increased motivation and morale. People want to feel like they're in a startup every single day where they know exactly what they're charging towards and they don't mind working hard to get there.
Yeah, and I think that we also feel some incremental success with Agile and DevOps methods also. We're not waiting for that big bang of the waterfall where the project may or may not succeed. We see incrementally how the thing is evolving and improving, and we see the fruits of our labors very often and very frequently. And I think that just feels good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, one of the key things you learn in Agile is to deliver value as early as possible, as early as the first sprint, as a matter of fact. So the fact that you can even get the first sprint out of the way and that, maybe all you've done is just defined what your test cases are. You feel like you've achieved something. And then each sprint further, you continue to make progress, you continue to knock off checklist items. It just makes you feel good about getting work done. So one of the things that I took from the next survey is that there's just a need for more speed. One of the interesting things is that folks are trying to get to this point of a release per day, or at least a release when I want to. And what we're finding is that the majority of the people that we interviewed, and this was a survey of 719 developers, that their releases are still 1 or 2 releases per year. That's the vast majority, the majority, not the vast majority, but the majority, 29%, and then 1 release per quarter. So over 50% of the respondents are doing quarterly or longer releases, and but their build cycle is, in a contrast, is this rolling build, and at least 1 build per day are 22 and 31%. So those two things kind of don't quite match up too well. So folks are getting the build frequency going, they're checking in their code more often, but they're still not quite releasing at the rate that they would want to be. So there's still this gap between getting the development process fine-tuned and getting the release frequency kind of tuned up as well. Now, whether or not you should be releasing once per day or once per week, that's really a business decision. What you really want to have is the ability to release at those increments. You want to be able to push out a bug. If the bug takes 20 minutes to fix, and it could go through automated testing in a matter of maybe an hour or less, because maybe all you did was you moved a button over 3 pixels or who knows what. There really shouldn't be anything blocking code like that from going out the door. And that's sort of like what the metric should be, not whether or not you are releasing once per day, but could you release a fix in a day if you needed to. And so that's probably a more healthy way of looking at it rather than just purely rating it based on what your release cycle is. But nonetheless, what we're seeing is a lot of companies are still struggling to get even greater than once per month. So now one of the things that Forrester talks about is their customer experience index. And so what we do is we basically do some analytics and also a lot of surveys with companies in various industries to find out, like, if you can improve the customer experience of your product, does it actually improve the bottom line? And what we found resoundingly is it does. The wireless providers, for example, just by simply making a small incremental improvement, able to add $175 million to their bottom line. The same is true for these other industries such as luxury automotive, upscale hotels, and so forth. Now, you might say, well, maybe these aren't necessarily digital transformation types companies, but that's not true, right? So wireless providers definitely. Luxury auto, I mean, every new car you buy is mobile enabled. It's connected, somehow with your device. My Chevy truck has an online app I can use to find out what it's doing today, sitting out there in the garage. Is the oil need to be changed or not? So all of these things are now becoming more interconnected with our mobile life and our digital life. And if you can improve the experience, then that's great. Now, how does this kind of relate to release cycle, or how does it relate to Agile and DevOps? Well, if you can respond to what your customer wants, if you can get feedback real time, if you can push a release to make a fix or make a fine tune or release new features as needed, you can improve your customer experience by simply just being responsive to your customers. So here we have it, agility driven by feedback. So here's one of the reasons why feedback is really important. In a large-scale study by Bing at Microsoft, they found that 1/3 of their ideas improved the target metric, so that was good. 1/3 of their ideas had no effect on the targeted metric, so not so good. And 1/3 of their ideas actually decreased the targeted metric. So, and the thing that they noticed is that the seniority or authority of the person proposing the idea had no effect on the success of the idea itself. So it didn't. What it really means is that you need feedback. And so we also got this other interesting quote from a CTO at a major financial institution that we had to share. The term enhancement often disguises rework caused by an original requirement that was wrong in the first place. So, without feedback, you're really just guessing sometimes. And even though, like at Microsoft, we would do all these blind tests and studies, and subject matter experts would tell us what people want to see. It wasn't until these products got out into the field that we actually got a good idea of how they were being used, what kinds of issues were coming up, what kind of things people really wanted, and some of the things that we didn't even think would be issues, we found that we needed to do improvements on. So feedback is absolutely important, and feedback is a big piece of being agile. So how do you get there? How do you do it? So we're going to talk about lean, value stream mapping, architecture, and measurement. So the first thing that's important about lean is just sort of getting the idea around it, right? The idea behind a lean strategy is to be able to refine, reduce, so refine your workflow, reduce waste, measure how successful you are, and then repeat. So you want to just continuously refine your agile strategy. In the top left quadrant, we're going to define business objectives, value stream maps. In the right-hand quadrant, going in a clockwise manner, we'll look at behavioral practices, process technology, top-down and bottom-up types of functionality. In the bottom right, business value, business outcomes. So we want to make sure that we identify improvements, implement change, deliver results, and then measure the impact, whether it's pre-production or post-production. Measurement is extremely important. So the first thing you want to do is you want to apply lean principles for both Agile and DevOps. So the principles of lean software development focus on creating value for the business, eliminate waste, think about continuous improvement, incorporate that, have respect for people, and promote excellence. And then the practices are minimally viable product, the idea of what is the minimum we need to do to get this feature to work. And then you can take a look at it, you can build, measure, lean, and learn from it, and then minimize the work in progress that it takes to get those types of minimally viable products done, and then maximize flow. So when you think about these things, one of the things that we think about in software is component-based software approaches that are inspired by manufacturing innovation. So instead of, when they were looking at these things at Toyota, instead of, trying to build the whole car all together, they realized they could break it down into components and have greater control over all the various manufacturing steps, so that each team that was responsible for those components could take a look at it, understand how best to perform the manufacturing step, and they were allowed to make suggestions. They weren't just treated like pieces of machinery on the shop floor. The respect for people was a real thing. Let's get their feedback, understand what people are telling us about why these doors don't quite fit on the car anymore. Supply chain principles are now refining the DevOps practices. So the whole idea of which kind of components do you have in your software is actually important. You don't want it to be willy-nilly about just taking anything that's off the shelf for free. You want to make sure you choose good components that are going to fit into your lean practice. And then the whole modern software factory practices, they're all being adopted from the lean manufacturing practices as the Toyota way. The idea of optimizing your software development by looking at how often are things just hanging around on people's desks waiting for them to be approved. Are we using teams in ineffectual ways? Do we have poor communication or good communication up and down the chain to make all these things happen? So these are how lean principles are being applied to software development with Agile and DevOps. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to eliminate the typical software delivery bottlenecks. So the very first one is usually lack of effective customer insight. Somebody proposes an idea, but is it an idea based on customer insight, or is it just something that somebody wants to do? Another one could be too much work in progress. There's so many things that need to get done, everybody's context switching back and forth. Then there's the whole manual build and integration process. So are we automating this, or is it manual? Is there a lot of manual steps going on for code review, or is there something else happening? Manual testing, the unit under test, exploratory testing, functional testing. What can we do here to improve these steps? Lack of sufficient test data, so you make a release, but you don't actually know if you actually have full coverage, or are you covering all the right scenarios? And then the whole idea of customer value. Are you actually delivering customer value at the end? And so a lot of these steps, there's wait steps, there's waiting, there's manual and error-prone steps. It just adds up to a lot of trouble. So what teams have found out through trial and error basically, and the reason why they're adopting these is that they end up with extra features that they don't need. They end up with a lot of task switching, a lot of wait time, and a lot of defects. And the idea behind, and this sort of goes completely against the idea of lean, where it's like, what is the minimally viable product, not the maximally viable product? So you want to get it down to like the bare number of features that you need so you can prove out your idea. So apply value stream mapping to uncover and measure waste. First thing you do is you plug in from your customer request into the business submits an idea to the account team, and then you measure. All right, well, there was time to actually account for whether or not they were reading the idea, and then time waiting around for someone to pick up the next step, and then the idea is discussed. The requirements in doc is generated, and the design specified. So all these steps are taking place, but in between them, there's a lead time of 123 days versus a process time of 39 days. So when you look at this, you see the lead time of 2 days on the first one with the account team, but they only took 1 day to actually process it. And then the next one was, a lead time of 3 days, but it only took someone 3 hours to actually decide if it was a good idea. And then the next step would be a lead time of 5 days, but a process time of 5 days. So you start realizing that there's a lot of work just lying around waiting for things to get done. And it even happens in the the testing stage or the staging and the deployment steps. So when you add it all up, you find out that in many cases in this particular process that was mapped, there were 84 days of just time wasted where nothing was happening. And so it's important to understand why is this idle time happening, and is there anything that can be done to remove it through automation or just through better communication? So one of the things that you can think about doing for removing waste in your process, and you hear about this a lot, is changing your architecture. So one of the big reasons why companies in the past had trouble releasing more frequently was because they had large monolithic pieces of code. So if you look at this big block on the left-hand side, the deployment package is everything that has to do with the user experience, the application control, the business logic, and the data access layer. That's what would be called like a monolithic application. And so what can happen in your process is that even though like maybe page 4 or page 5 are already written and ready to go out the door, they can't be released independently of each other, so they're just waiting. So that's just value waiting on the table to be released while maybe the business logic of the data access areas are being updated so they can all be released together. And this is probably one of the #1 reasons why you're still seeing the release cycle take so long, as we had on the previous slide, where most companies are still doing 1 or 2 releases a year. It's because they're stuck in this mode right here. Even though they're building and they're testing and doing a lot of other innovative automation, they can't release the whole product because things are just stuck here waiting. And so that means things are actually aging and getting old and maybe even not becoming as useful as they might have been had they been released in a timely manner. So the way to get around that, and the way you see a lot of companies moving towards, is the whole idea of microservice. And that is like each individual piece of functionality or value that could be released to your customers can be done in an independent track and in parallel. So pages and business logic can be released independently of each other to enable value to get out to your customers much quicker. If all you're doing is revamping the look and feel of your website or releasing a new mobile app, there's no reason why that should have to wait for your business logic to get updated. If those two things are tightly coupled, you need to think about a more loosely coupled solution. And I'll tell you, I didn't really understand this whole move to microservices until I went to the DevOps meetup locally here in Boston. And a company was talking about how, a large retail company, they were trying to speed up their release process, and they were stuck with this monolithic application. And the reason they went to microservices wasn't because it was the latest trendy thing. It was because this is the only way they could release various components of their application out the door in order to keep up with some of the other larger online retailers and remain competitive. So it was very much, a life or death situation to move to microservices to speed up their release and allow them to get the value out the door that they needed to. Now, when you think about the whole idea of Agile plus DevOps, you naturally think about this giant DevOps wheel where there's all these different pieces all combined together. So one of the things that you really need to think about is what's the value being delivered. So it starts off on the left-hand side where we have like basic and code integrity, buildability, component integrity, component quality. These are all various things that are the value that comes out of these various steps in a DevOps tool chain. And so when you think about DevOps, you have to think about, and you think about Agile, you want to think about what is the value that's coming out of all these steps, not, did I automate 300 tests or am I actually getting better quality? Do I do continuous integration? Or am I getting a situation where all my developers can actually work better in parallel because they don't have to worry about stepping on each other's code? Am I using infrastructure as code just because it's the latest thing? Or am I preventing environment drift? If you're using infrastructure as code and yet for some reason you can do an audit on your production servers and all of them are still different, then you're not really making the most use of infrastructure as code. And so you need to start thinking about value being delivered by each of these steps in your Agile and DevOps process. Otherwise, you're just either doing Agile for the wrong reasons or not getting as much value out of it, or you're automating and for the wrong reasons, or at least not for the right target reasons, and you're not getting as much value out of it. You have to think about what is the value being delivered by each individual step, and then you need to measure it to find out that you are being effective. If you don't know if you're being effective, then how do you know if your products are being well received or ill received? How do you know if your performance has gone up or gone down? So it's just incredibly important just to sort of change some of the mind thinking about why you take on some of these DevOps steps to because it needs to be done versus I need to deliver value. So so here's another important sort of like mismatch kind of metric. So one of the things that we discovered is that the overlap between the products that are tested and or the features that are tested in products and the ones that are actually used, you would ideally see this yellow circle and this sort of pinkish circle on top of each other, but they're not. there's still only 35% overlap between the features that are tested versus the features that are actually used. And so what does that tell you is that you're only delivering 35% value out of this entire yellow circle of your testing. You're not actually testing the features that are being used. So either you're testing the wrong things, or you're not testing the right thing, and not testing the right things, or you're not testing enough. And so either way, if you're not measuring and know these things for sure, then you're just going to end up in a situation where products are going to go out the door, and there's going to be failures, or there's going to be a misalignment between how you expected the users to be using your products and how they're actually being used. So you really need to get better insights with operational analytics in order to improve your alignment. And so the other thing that I talked about early on was why it's important to give each stakeholder visibility into the pipeline. Each of these, sort of like subject matter experts that lives in your software delivery chain, they each are focused on different aspects of how that software gets delivered. The product owner wants to make sure they're delivering the right value, and they also want to make sure that they're releasing this value at the proper pace. Are their users expecting new features? When you're using an online game or an online retailer, you want to see things get fixed that are glitches. You like to see new improvements on a timely, on an occasional basis. If there's offers or special deals, you want them to be prominently displayed. If there's any sort of change in dynamic to your application, a lot of times it keeps people a little bit more interested. So these product owners are very much in tune to how their end users perceive their product. And then the developers are thinking about, well, how can we do a little bit better job of reducing cycle time? Can we, work in a more agile manner to get the right fix out the door at the right time? And then how well is our code performing? It would be great to know if that fix we just released actually solved, everyone's problem, or is there a new problem that came up because of it? If you're in QA, you want to know, is our test coverage adequate? Are we actually doing the right test, which speaks to our previous slide? What's the feedback from the live site? Are there other tests that we could be doing from a regression point of view or new testing to help us uncover more areas of issue to make sure we're fixing those and focus on the right spot? And the operations guys, they want to know, what are the system requirements? Can you tell me what they are up front so that I can make sure we have all the right hardware in place, that the infrastructure as code is going to be compliant with what our needs are? If you're launching a site and all of a sudden you introduce a new payment method, the ops people are usually the folks that are the gatekeepers of compliance and governance. They want to make sure that all the right ports are set correctly, that things are configured properly, and they also want to know which KPIs they need to monitor. We need to know what the performance of this site is. Let me know what they are now so I can start building up these monitoring so when the new feature goes live, we're ready for it. Don't tell me the week before it goes live that you need, all these requirements need to be in place or that these KPIs need to be monitored. These guys are usually the last folks to find out what's going on. They should be involved up front so they can do all this planning ahead of time. And then the business folks, they want to know, what's the release cost run rate? How much is it costing us to put these fixes out the door? And what's the cost of the feature we just delivered? In terms of number of resources, in terms of, amount of money being spent hosting all these things. They're trying to figure out what's our return on investment. Are we taking all the correct steps to make sure that the waste has been eliminated, that we're working as efficiently as possible, and that the business's objectives are being met? All 5 of these personas, and there's probably a few more in between, if they're in sync up front with what the goals are, it can make the whole process work a lot quicker and a lot smoother in the end. And so finally, I'm not sure if this is finally, but this is every year Forrester does what's called the Forrester Wave, and this was on continuous software delivery tools. And one of the things you'll notice, it's kind of a complex chart, but the way to look at it is the blue line is software products that we see are going to have significant success. The gray line is ones of moderate success, and the red one is of minimal success. And so what we're seeing is that companies that adopt value stream management, they're just starting to heavily invest in those products now, and they are seeing great success with them. And what we expect is that over the next couple of years, this circle that looks like with a little play button logo on it that says value stream management, we expect that to move up the curve, because at the present time, when we took this this survey last year, it was considered sort of like an investment, a heavily invested area. So people hadn't quite got that return on investment yet, but they were seeing great success with these products. And so now we're going to expect to see this this value stream management move up the curve on the blue line of significant success, but moving into more of providing a return on investment for these companies, because its ability to give visibility into the whole value stream has been met with great success. So value stream management, VSM tools aggregate data across multiple software delivery pipelines. They provide visibility into the state of work flowing through each pipeline. So the idea of those 5 personas, being able to look at what's going on in your value stream, is very valuable to them. They can look at it from different perspectives and glean different data from it, but they're all looking at the same thing. They all realize, all right, we're trying to deliver either a capability or a certain feature through this software delivery pipeline. How am I doing against our business objectives? It allows the business managers and developers in IT to make faster and better decisions based on what they see in the pipeline. And it also elevates the concept of workflow by linking effort with business value. So these 3 things are really powerful tools that the value stream management tool does. It's sort of an overlay in what you get to use after you do your full value stream mapping process.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. What you said about Agile and DevOps together and leveraging kind of a value stream approach to software development and delivery, as you know, it really resonates with me and frankly with Tasktop's customers as well. We're absolutely seeing the fact that organizations that are really serious about their digital transformations are looking to fuse the success of Agile and DevOps together to get that beautifully tuned Ferrari, Agile Ferrari, driving on that smooth DevOps highway. Taking the best practices that they've learned from each and putting the focus squarely on continually delivering customer value. I think that's the emphasis with the notion of the value stream. And they know that to actually continually deliver this customer value, they have to look at the entire software delivery value stream, from ideation to production, and really looking at software development and delivery as a value stream. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk a little bit more about value stream management and how to enable it. So as you know, as we went through the beginning, at the very beginning of this webinar, we saw that the survey respondents didn't really know a lot about value streams. So I'm going to briefly kind of introduce the notion of a value stream, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to enable value stream management. So the notion of a value stream, as Chris, you noted earlier, originally came out of manufacturing or lean manufacturing, to be more precise. Although we really don't need to get hung up on the idea of lean being an addition to Agile and DevOps. It really is a very nice complement to it. But the concept around value streams is really very simple. It's the sequence of activities that an organization undertakes to deliver on a customer request. So if you think of a manufacturing line, the different stations on an assembly line represent a sequence of steps. Each specializes in a particular part of the overall construction of that finished thing. And while in software we don't really like to think of software delivery as steps, that feels so very waterfully. But particularly in larger organizations or organizations with large application portfolios or those that operate in regulated environments, these organizations really do have a bunch of specialists doing specialist work as the work moves from an idea to a done piece of software running in production. So the software delivery value stream is everything that happens between someone having a good idea and that good idea running in production. And of course, having visibility across all of this is necessary for value stream management. It's all the metrics and all of the stakeholders having visibility to the pipeline, as Chris, you were mentioning earlier. So what's underneath those yellow arrows, you may ask? Well, it's a simplified view of some of those steps. The practitioners that perform them, the artifacts or work products they produce, and the tools they use to do their job. You know, it's just a sketch. Obviously, software development and delivery is way more complicated than this, but it's a way that we can talk about it. And we would love for this to be kind of a smooth flow from that good idea on the left through the steps of value creation and into production. In fact, this really should represent a natural flow of information among all these disciplines. For example, on the left there might be a project management or a program management office using a PPM tool like CA Clarity PPM who sends business epics to the business analysts. And those business analysts or product managers, they elicit requirements and perhaps use a specialist tool like Doors or JAMA, Blueprint, and the like, and send those requirements to both the developers and the testers. And the developers may use their Agile planning tool like JIRA, CA Agile Central, formerly Rally, version 1, RTC, TFS, LeanKit, and others. And the testers, who in spite of the fact that testers are meant to be working very closely with the coders on a Scrum team, well, as we all know in a large company, they're more likely to be using another tool to manage their work, tools like HPE's Quality Center or Tricentis or Zephyr. And once the development team implements and tests the user stories, committing their work to the version control system, all of this gets put into a build, which gets validated, we hope, and put into production and monitored, etc. Now, I know I use that yellow outline to refer to this area as DevOps, and I've kind of labeled what happens after code commit as DevOps, and as we discussed earlier, I hate to do that because I think of DevOps in a much more holistic way, the way we described it earlier. I really do think of it as the original definition of a culture of change from idea to production. But the harsh truth is, and our survey kind of validated this, that many organizations really think of DevOps as what happens after code commit and the automation that goes along with that. So sadly, I'm going to conform to that just for a moment, just to prove my point. And the point is that unfortunately, many organizations think in terms of many pipelines and many value streams instead of looking at the whole thing together. And this viewpoint, I think both Chris and I both agree, certainly limiting. But the tool infrastructure doesn't help. The plain truth is that while these disciplines have tools to make their individual disciplines more successful, because these tools don't interoperate, they actually serve to fragment the value stream even further. Information doesn't flow, visibility is fragmented. The only thing you're actually seeing is the reports that you can get out of the individual tools rather than visibility across the entire value stream. So it becomes very difficult to do, as Chris suggested earlier, to manage the pipeline with key metrics when the metrics themselves are so very fragmented. So how do you find and remove those bottlenecks if you can't see where they are? And to make the situation worse, this infrastructure actually serves to create waste and non-value added work. Because how does this work flow across the value stream? Well, instead of flowing automatically, it's a very manual process. One colleague exports info from their tool and sends it to another, probably an email. The receiving colleague rekeys the information into their tool because, frankly, they need that information in their tool to do the work. It's an interesting conundrum because while each of these disciplines are actually doing their work specifically to share, that is not the infrastructure is actually preventing it from happening. So to fix this, we think in terms of value stream integration. It's the essence of value stream management and the first step in the journey to be able to integrate all the tools in the value stream from software ideation into production, the software delivery value stream integration. It's about using automation, not just in DevOps, but to flow the information across the entire pipeline, across all the tools and people. It's about being able to have access to the activity data across all of the software delivery value stream so that you can see what's going on, identify the bottlenecks, and remove them. And it's about taking a best-of-breed tool chain and getting the individual tools to work together in a way that allows organizations to pick and choose the right tools for the job and evolve their tool chain as business conditions warrant. So unsurprisingly, this is the work that Tasktop does. We do automate the flow of the information by synchronizing these systems together. When an artifact is created or modified in one system, it's automatically mirrored in the appropriate other systems. And the communication can fluidly happen within the tool. So for example, if a tester finds a bug, they record it in their defect tracking tool. It's automatically flows to the backlog, which is probably managed in an Agile planning tool. When the developer starts work and puts that work in process, that status is updated everywhere. And if the developer has a question, she writes it in the comments section of that Agile tool, and it flows to the tester in the tester's defect tracking tool, where the tester can answer it or append a screenshot or other data and automatically flow it back to the developer. So everyone works with the most up-to-date information. And because the integration fabric is a witness to all this activity, we can actually provide greater visibility across this entire value stream. We keep track of all the flow of the relationships of all these artifacts, and create a database of activity data, consolidating all this information into one place so you can use your BI tools and create consolidated dashboards and reports so that you can actually see where things stand across the entire value stream. So Tasktop has been doing this for quite a while. There's a lot of complexity in doing this, but we manage this complexity very well. The way our tools work is that you do configuration rather than coding to integrate all of this work together. Really makes it very efficient to integrate all of those tools. We're very well accepted by very large companies and very small companies as well. I see we're rapidly running out of time, so I would suggest we will leave this open for Q&A for folks that can stay, but for folks who have for other meetings and have to attend to other things, we would very much like to hear from you. Sarah, you had a few words as well?
I did. As you can see on your screen, you can learn more about how Tasktop can help you with your value stream integration on our website, or watch a demo or contact us that way. And you can also join us in May for our webinar on getting visual with value stream integration. We'll be showing some exciting new features and a different way to approach value stream integration. So if you need to jump off now, by all means do. We have a couple of questions that have come in as well. One was a little bit about how you keep your tools in sync. So I know you covered the fact that is what Tasktop does. One specific scenario that someone mentioned is that they have, one of the problems they're facing is they have one instance of JAMA, and they have two separate instances of Jira. And so they would like to be able to synchronize those, both instances of Jira with the one instance of JAMA. Is that something that we can do, and how would you recommend that?
It is absolutely something that we do. It's not a big surprise actually for organizations that have adopted Jira that they have many instances of Jira. That's actually pretty common practice. So very often we're engaged to help some continuity across all the Jira instances. It's also very difficult to kind of get a holistic view across just the Jira instances. So that bit of functionality that I mentioned earlier about being able to pull reports, consolidating information across different tools absolutely pertains to Jira as well. And organizations use all manner of Agile planning tools in together, not only JIRA, but version 1 and RTC and the like. The larger the organization, the more likely it is actually to have several of the same kind of tool as well.
So you're actually enabling, like, say, like a build or a CI process to connect into multiple different agile planning tools if that was necessary?
Absolutely. That is absolutely the case.
That's pretty cool.
Chris, I keep telling you our stuff is very cool.
I agree. Be part of this wonderful webinar.
So I'm getting a couple of questions about specific tools as well. So I am sending to the entire audience a link to our integrations page as well. So if you go to tasktop.com/integrations, you can see all the different lifecycle tools that you can connect, as well as the DevOps and gateway tools, if you will, and you can see them right up there on that slide. So let's see. In a project context, how would you sync activity that is tracked in Microsoft Project with value stream activity in Tasktop?
That is a very interesting question. Different organizations have different techniques for project management. Certainly, using Microsoft Project is one way. Some organizations have more of a PMO perspective and use PPM tools to track projects. The interesting thing is, in large organizations, they might be using a PPM tool to track large initiatives and what we might in the Agile community refer to as an epic or a business epic. They might use a project to manage the status of work being done. And they may use an Agile planning tool to manage work as well. And that's an interesting conundrum. Each of these tools reflect work and how to manage work very, very differently. So as I was mentioning earlier, there's a lot of nuance in how these tools need to connect together. This is why I tell folks, don't try this at home. We do manage the nuances between how the PMO might look at work, how a project management tool might look at work, and how an Agile planning tool might look at work. And it is very complicated work, and this is why this is our life's work. This is what we do at Tasktop.
We actually had an interesting situation where that scenario came up in consulting, where we were working in an agile manner, but the customer had a deadline, and so we had to sort of like work forwards and backwards using all these different planning tools to make sure that we were going to actually hit our end date. I'm not sure if we could have done it with just agile planning tools alone, but the project manager, who was very comfortable using Microsoft Project, insisted that we overlay the entire agile system with this project management piece so he could make sure that we were going to actually deliver the value when we said we were going to. It was interesting. It was a lot of friction trying to figure that out.
It's interesting, when we were chatting at the very beginning of this webinar about kind of the difference of perspective and whether Agile and DevOps are successful, and yeah, we were ruminating about what management feels and what practitioners feel. I think at a management level, it feels so much better to look at a project in a project management tool. There's this, yes, there's this notion that we have an idea of when something is percentage completed. Yeah, exactly. And as Agilists, when a manager asks an Agile team, "Are you done?" or "What percentage are you done?" and they respond, "Well, I can't tell you percentage done. I'm done. Something is either done or it's not done." Right. And there are all these different components of the big thing. Those things are either done or not done. But the big thing, I can't tell you percentage of done. It doesn't feel good to a manager sometimes.
No, it doesn't. And so there's probably a whole other webinar on how to talk to your manager in an effective manner so he doesn't throw you out the window.
Maybe we'll do that someday.
Great. Well, we have another question about kind of how you would recommend getting started with defining your value stream. Do you start by identifying customer benefit and then trace all the processes backward? or how do you start?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you're trying to get out of it. You know, as we kind of illustrated during this webinar, there are a lot of different metrics that can be improved by improving how you deliver and develop your software. If what you're interested in is finding out how quickly you can solve a problem, let's say, for example, a problem comes into the service desk, and you don't have a real good sense of what is the holdup between identifying that problem when a customer calls up and actually getting the fix into production. You might know it took us 47 days to get that fix into production, but you may not know why did it take 47 days. You know, as Chris noted earlier, there's a big difference between lead time, or the elapsed time of that whole thing, and actual value producing time. You know, when were the different practitioners involved in that, actually touching that issue and fixing it. Identifying why it's taking 47 days to do something that really the people are only touching for maybe, I don't know, 5 hours, is a perfect example of using value stream mapping and identifying where the bottlenecks are. You know, and as Chris described, you just kind of map out the different steps, identify the time it takes to do in each of those steps, and the bottlenecks appear. Often I'm asked, you know, what's a great book to read to learn about value stream mapping? It's the Bible on it is a book called Learning to See by Mike Rother and John Shook. And the reason I bring that up is it's about seeing the bottlenecks and the problems within your value stream. And one of the issues with having such a fragmented value stream approach, really compartmentalizing all the different disciplines, is that you don't see where the problems are across the entire software delivery and pipeline. And that's the joy of value stream management, that you're really trying to find the enhancements on your business process. I think of software development and delivery as a business process. You're trying to find where you can enhance that business process by looking at it very holistically.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Great. Well, we do unfortunately have a couple more questions that have come in, but I know that we are over time already, and our presenters need to jump off the line now. So we will follow up with you individually if we weren't able to get to your question live. So thank you, Betty, and thank you, Chris, for joining us, and thank you all attendees as well. Again, if you have any questions, you can find out more information on our website. There will also be a quick survey that appears when we close the webinar, and if you want to get in touch with us, you can just let us know right there as well. So thank you, everyone, and this concludes our webinar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.